Do we have it now?
Oh.
There we go. We should be good now.
Oh, now we have audio. Now you got to redo the intro.
You'd think you could hire people to do this.
You got to redo the intro. Can you bring on staff?
That's right. All right. So anyway, welcome to Real Fish Talk 16. We're talking about wild caught fish. Stems from the video from earlier today, really, on my channel. We've got Joel here from Corvus Oskin, internet fame. And we're going to talk about wild caught fish. Not necessarily, well, okay. Good or bad, that's the question for you to decide. The funny part is I haven't even expressed an opinion yet on it in the video, I believe, and yet I'm wrong.
Right.
That's my favorite part is I didn't actually say where I come in on this issue, but I'm wrong.
Right.
So
it's easy to be wrong, like right out the gate, right?
Yeah.
That's
You're wrong and you should feel wrong. Like,
it's
well,
the default setting,
I
right?
hadn't given an answer yet, really. I was just providing information. So
Yeah.
what I do want to focus on, or I want to get clear here. Anything said is not necessarily my belief or Joel's belief. We're here to spur thinking on the subject, and I know there's going to be topics come up that people are very passionate and heated about, and so like I'll say for myself, I know I'm a guy that typically won't hunt or even go fishing, and it's not from the fact of like it's not that like I wouldn't do that to feed my family. It's that currently where I live, I don't have to do it to feed my family. So if I was going to die tomorrow, I would do those things if I had to stay alive. That's
right.
For sure. But like right now, morally is I don't want to feel sad for the next week when I shoot a giraffe or I pulled a hook out of a bass's mouth or whatever it is, because that's going to, make me feel not so good. And so that's why I don't do it. And it's not from I think it's wrong if you do it or anything like that. It's purely just that is my own thoughts. And so people can say, okay, well, that's super hypocritical when you're willing to catch a wild caught fish. Like, well, it doesn't make me feel bad currently, so that's why. That's my motives. And I think you yourself may be a hunter or have hunted or do endorse things. So I think it's going to be a good conversation on two different opinions, but we might have the same opinion on some things. And I'm pretty open-minded and realize sometimes things got to die so other things don't die.
Right. Right. It is a super heated topic. I mean, obviously, if we were to talk about, just from the ecology sense, is that if you don't have to, then why do it? Why would you catch wild caught fish? Because these wild caught fish don't need to be caught. But I think, the first initial thing is that they wouldn't be within the hobby if we didn't catch them. If at some point in time they didn't catch them. And, a parallel to that would be the chickens at my house.
Yeah.
If somebody didn't catch the chickens, I wouldn't have chickens. Mainly because I probably would not invest the time in wandering around the woods to try and find a wild chicken.
You probably know this. Where does the chicken originate from?
I think the chicken originates from Africa, I think. Could be wrong.
So in your lifetime, it would be very unlikely that you would discover chickens.
I think so. It'd be pretty unlikely. Yeah. Pretty unlikely. So that would be, a parallel situation that does apply to, 2017. That's what year it is right now. We are in the 21st century, and we're not necessarily going to make some sweeping adaptations to change things that have happened in the past, right? Like, there are chickens all over the place. Like, you just got back from Hawaii, and there's just chickens running all over the place. They're not from there. I know that for a fact. They're not supposed to be from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. But, we're not going to go back and change those things. So I think, like, the main topic, I think, that people would be able to keep in their head is to remember what is the best opportunity that we can embrace, right, and possibly propagate, right? Propagate more good opportunities, in relation to it being the 21st century, and not going like, well, I could make a time machine and go back to the 1700s and make them not do X, Y, and Z, right? Because we can't necessarily do that. But how do we how do we start to take some steps? First of all, like in the way that we think about things, how do we perceive the things that are going on, and what we would consider to be acceptable or not in regards to reality versus where we might be trying to go to.
Talk to.
Where,
that's why we're talking about it.
Because where we're trying to head to.
So
how do we get?
You can take 1,000 chickens out of wherever they come from, and the next person says, well, we think only 500 is sustainable, and the next person says we shouldn't take any, and the next person says take them all.
Right.
You know, so that's the huge gray area. Is no, I don't think anyone could be definitive on. I don't think anyone's right. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I think it's a discussion.
Right. That's one of those things. Is that like, being a person that I am, like having my history is, and just to lay it out on the table here a little bit, like, I get into conversations with vegans quite often. And their initial reaction to me is very negative, very angry, very, that they're going to lash out at me and what I'm working on doing and what I'm trying to do. And, my simple response to that is I was vegan for almost 5 years. Okay. So, and then they go, well, wait, well, never mind, but whatever, you're a jerk, It's like, okay, well,
that's the point I want to bring up. I think the easiest thing is to be on a high horse. Like, this conversation, like, for instance, it is way easier as being people on YouTube to just not even talk about this.
Right.
Because by talking about it, we will offend and we will not offend different people, but we will not bring up this topic with anyone. So, like, it's really easy to get up on a high horse and be like, listen to what someone else says, and then be like, well, I don't do that. You're doing it wrong, or whatever.
Right.
Like, it's way harder to be the person going, well, let's try to figure out what is, I don't even want to say morally, but let's say morally okay, what is economically okay, what is, ecologically okay. Like, there's so many facets to it, and depending on who you're advocating for, like, are you advocating for starving humans, or is it the rainforest, or is it your dad's tropical fish business that's going out, the family business is going to lose, or is it legislation? Like, there's so many facets, and luckily there is a project that's being done. It's been going on for about, I think I read 10 years, and it's basically a film that's being produced, and it's the whole goal of the film is to look at wild-caught fish and then interview everyone they could that has a hand in it. So I know, like, I've seen the itinerary, or at least I've seen parts of the film at this point, and they interviewed some people from, like, the fish purchasers from, like, Petco and PetSmart, different vets. They've interviewed the people collecting. They've interviewed the importers and exporters. They've interviewed, and so all these people have different perspectives on what it means to their life. They interviewed locals. They interviewed, and so I think the goal of the movie or the documentary or whatever is so that now you've actually heard, my son's starving to death, he needs $4 for food. You hear, PetSmart saying, we want to buy it as cheaply as possible so that corporations can make more money. And then you hear about, like, oh, well, the forest's getting destroyed. And so then, after you've heard everyone's opinion, and I want to say there's like 60 different people, all the way from, oh, you have 47 different doctorates, to you're just a person that catches them, or you're just a person that benefits from the person that catches them. And then you make your own decision on whether, oh, should I or should I not be partaking in this, after you have more facts than we have right now. And that's the thing, is getting some facts or information. Because I know from talking to people online and in my store, most people I encounter have never heard about Project Piaba, don't really know about like the Nile perch and these things that have happened in the past. And so they're going on, well, I think it's bad to take something out of the wild, and in a vacuum, maybe that's true. If I take all the chickens out of the wild and Corey owns and eats all of them, that is a bad thing. But if I bring chickens to Mars, and all of a sudden we can now be sustainable on Mars, maybe bringing 5 chickens is worth saving their natural habitat, because now all humans move to Mars, and now it's a pristine environment for these chickens. So there's pros and cons, and to get into the more of the meat of it, when it comes to wild caught fish, essentially there's money, right? So there's money in fish. That's why I do fish, right? Well, that's not the only reason, but that's why I'm a business in fish, is when I sell a fish, hopefully I make some money and I can pay an employee and we can do things with it. All right? So at the lowest level, someone's got to collect that fish. Now, in my video, I talked about specifically the cardinal tetra trade, but there's other trades, like for instance, there's Pleco Divers, and they basically get paid. You dive down, you grab a plecostomus, you put it in a 2-liter bottle that you've slit the side open, because when a 2-liter bottle, if you compress it, it opens up a little bit. You throw that Pleco in there, and then you don't compress it anymore, and it closes up. It's a little cage, and because there's holes poked in it, you can have that tucked to your belt, and you swim around, you grab more Plecos. That's what you do. And then when you come up after a long, hard day of work, they go, great, here's $11, and that sounds like nothing, but where they're being collected, $11 is like someone paid you $1,000. Like all of a sudden that $11 goes really far. And the problem is, most people in that job, they only live 5 years, 4 years, because it's really dangerous and people die. But it's like us in America getting the CEO job of some company, of like, wow, I'm making insane amounts of money. My family is really well to do now because I'm doing this crazy dangerous job. And, I myself haven't witnessed it, but I've talked to people that go and study it and do these types of things. And basically, it's a very crude compressor up on a boat with a hose that, the stories I'm told at least, is you wrap it around your neck so you don't lose hold of it.
Right.
And then you breathe into it, and you basically take a breath in and then breathe out, meanwhile trying to catch Plecos. And if you know anything about Plecos, where they come from, the water is so crazy fast that you kind of dive down. Well, you put weighted belts on, so you fall down, you grab Plecos as much as you can, and then you go back up. And it's a super dangerous job, so that we can get Plecos, right? And a lot of them, you go into the whole, well, can't we just breed all this stuff? There's a lot of stuff we can breed, but there's a lot of stuff we literally don't know how to breed yet.
Yeah.
And, so the problem, I think, stems back, and this is my own personal thing, I think it stems back to, if no one buys wild-caught plecostomus, for instance, that gentleman or woman who is diving now doesn't have a job, and they are forced to get another job. And maybe they go, well, now I'm just going to collect cardinal tetras. But let's say we stopped as Americans, or as Europeans, or whoever, as a group of people, we say we're not going to buy any more. So if his family is known for collecting Plecos and now they're out of an industry, they have to take up something else. It's not really in my wheelhouse to think, like, if someone shut down Aquarium Co-op, would I just be like, I guess I starve to death and die now. I won't try doing any other industry. I won't try to get another job. Like, oh, sorry, them's the breaks. Like, obviously, if someone shuts down Aquarium Co-op, I'm going to, start polluting the world as much as I can. That's just another job. But so they got to do something. Maybe it's farming, like there's crazy things that, I know we were talking about this briefly and you can go into it, but I think as a first world country liver, we have no idea what it's like. Because like one of the businesses is burn down the rainforest, collect the charcoal, put it on the side of the road, get paid.
Yeah.
Like that literally makes coal and then makes power. So like that is a job, and it might not be sustainable in the fact that, like, well, if they just burn down all the rainforest, what about in 20 years when there's no more to burn down? I think part of the philosophy is I'm worried about not dying tomorrow. In 20 years, I'll worry about not dying in 20 years.
Right.
Because we don't, or not we, but they don't have that security built in. So
right, and you and I were talking about it earlier, is that, living in America, we have a kind of a skewed perspective, that there aren't a lot of countries out there that do a lot of the the nature preserves, the amount of land that we have set aside that is protected. You can't do anything on it, you know. And if you were somebody out there that decided, oh, hey, I'm going to cut down all these trees and take them, they're likely just send you to jail if you're stealing trees or stealing lumber or illegally hunting. You know, one of the things one of the strange things in America is that if you can prove that you're a subsistence hunter, is that you are able to hunt throughout the year. You know, that's one of those things that you go like, this is how I live, this is how I eat. In America, you can do that. It is pretty rare and few and far between that people are necessarily doing that kind of stuff in America. But, you know, as we drive around and we go to our jobs and we do all that kind of stuff, like the nature preserves have been here so long. All the national forests and all that stuff has been protected for so long that, you know, somebody like me who's coming up on 40 years old, that's been my whole entire life. That has been the normal. That has been the normal my entire life, that there are these huge forests that we can go to, that we can have a part of. We were talking about it earlier, like Mount Rainier. You can drive to Mount Rainier. You can go to the visitor center. You can meet a lot of the people that work there, the forestry, or you know, the all the scientists and stuff. Most of them are there. You can actually go talk to them. You see what's going on. You can go hike around on the trails and stuff like that. You can learn about how Mount Rainier is a volcano and all that kind of stuff. It's millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of infrastructure that is just in place and is very normal in America. It's very normal that you go state to state to state, whether you're in Kansas or Wyoming or Montana, Texas, whatever. You can go to these places and find out what's going on in the area, and we do have these protected lands, right, that are paid for by tax dollars. So it's the cumulative bucket that everyone chips into every year, and in a lot of places in the world, that is completely abnormal, you know, and it's definitely not a part of that society there. And as you mentioned, that it's not looked at by the people that are there because they are, and it's kind of rude to say, like, from my perspective, to go like, you know, that these people are living such a desperate existence. Desperate's kind of the wrong word.
We're just trying to portray a picture we're
not
familiar with.
They're living a more often than not, they're living a pretty difficult lifestyle that is
more difficult than what you're living from your eyes.
It's hand to mouth. You know what I mean? Is that, you know, I haven't eaten in 4 days. The decision-making process is I got to eat now or I'm getting closer to death, you know. So, and as you said, I've talked about this many times, like the autocyclists, how they're captured. They normally capture them like 5,000 at a time, throw them in a box and mail them up to stateside because they get, I think last time I checked, it was like 13 cents per each one or something is what they get.
I don't know what, like, the person that actually collects them gets. What I do know is I've heard stories that the amount of money they get paid is almost irrelevant. And it's because, let's say you collect 5,000 autocyclists, I give you $500, but then I tell you a pound of coffee and a pound of sugar is each $100.
Right.
So, like, that's part of the skewing. Like, oh, you want a T-shirt? Yeah, it's $172. You know, so, like, it's kind of skewed when you hear about, like, well, they're getting money, but when you then offer the same people things they can never get otherwise, like, I can walk in and I can buy this shirt. I could buy 100 of them today from a store, but when stores don't exist, like, this one shirt becomes insanely valuable if you don't have clothing. So it's kind of a skewed thing. And I tell you, like, yeah, I'll give you a shirt. All it takes is, you know, 500 or 5,000 autocyclists. You're going, yeah, I'm going to give me some autocyclists. I'm going to get a shirt for everyone in my family.
Right.
You know, so it's a different line of thinking. And I want to bring up something here. NY Gold says it's not about the people, it's about the protection of the fish. So in a vacuum, maybe that statement is true, but one goes hand in hand. The minute you make it so that someone can get shirts or clothing for their family off the backs of autocyclists, if someone oversees that, which typically the person that makes their money will do. There are people that, like, with, for instance, there are cryptocorns and buses and things like that where we will just, for lack of a better term, and it's going to get this video demonetized, rape and pillage the land for money. That is what we're trying to avoid. So when you support wild-caught stuff, you could be supporting, just destruction of habitat. But what we're trying to do is support preservation of habitat. And so with like a Project Piaba, let's say they're catching autocinclus, they're there to go and educate and just go, so we learned that autocinclus make 5 billion of these things a year. We're currently collecting 3 billion. We need to relax that a little bit and make sure that when we collect 2 billion leave, not like, well, half them died and we sent out 1 billion, because next year you won't be able to do this if you keep that up. And at first, it wasn't very successful at all. They were like, I got to worry about eating today and getting shirts for tomorrow. But now, when locals started seeing like, wait, it's way harder to catch cardinal tetras all of a sudden, they saw some of the effects of overfishing and, we're like, I don't get it. Why aren't they living anymore? It's like, well, we cut down the forest 5 miles up. Or like when Dean was there, by the way, when Dean was collecting fish out of the wild, you couldn't, like, that tributary, you go down there, they will shoot you. Right. And it's because they were using mercury and they were blasting away the sides of the river to get gold. Mm-hmm. Gold worth more than cardinal tetras. So there are groups of people that are passively fighting against the gold miners. They're at least going, you're destroying my family's income, and like at least that resistance is a step in the right direction. Like, they're not taking guns and physically fighting them, but when you get a group of people to go, hey, my livelihood is catching this tropical fish, and enough of them help convince the government to do something about it, that might actually start it. But I can't say I guarantee this, but if there is no money in fish anymore, I think there will be a lot less voices at the ground level saying, hey, please stop killing them.
Right. And I think two examples that I think would be pretty digestible to most people would be like the River Monster show when he went down to fish for the Arapaima and then met a lot of the locals, that he finds out that the locals, that's their favorite fish to eat, but they don't eat it anymore. And they're like, well, why don't they eat it anymore? Because there's not a lot of them. And, well, why isn't there not a lot of them? Because we used to eat them all. And they say, well, why don't you eat them now? Well, because the fishermen come here and pay us way more than what it would be worth for us to just simply eat them. And that money avails them the possibility to, externally supplement their food, right? So let's say they get some money and they're able to go buy 150-pound bags of rice or whatever, stuff that's going to definitely supplement them over the time that they may or may not be eating the Arapaima, right? And beans and rice are pretty easy to grow and stuff like that, especially in the nice tropical zone like that. And it also gives them an opportunity to kind of expand their small infrastructure a little bit so that they might be able to be farming and being guides to bring the fishermen to come and do those kinds of things and expand their family and bring some medicines and things like that are needed for those people in those positions. So the Arapaima, they used to just eat. Now the Arapaima eventually are more valuable now to them as a commodity, right? And so now they protect it, right? And most people go, oh, well, everyone should just have this altruistic idea that everything should be protected all of the time. But as I was kind of talking about earlier, with the people that are living that sort of desperate existence, these creatures may only just look like a supper for them or a threat to them. It's like we're trying to save the rhinos, like rhinoceros and stuff like that. And the rhinoceros might just be seen as a threat to the people that are living in the area, because Bob and Steve got killed last week, and we need to eliminate this threat one way or another. And that's more often than not how things are seen. So the parallel there between those two, I think, would be like the crab fisheries up in Alaska. If most people remember that the crab fisheries up in Alaska were not regulated realistically to any degree when they started out. It was go get your crab and bring it back here, and we'll give you money and you go get more.
And I assume at some point they're like, hey, it's harder to get crabs all of a sudden.
Yeah,
And then they
and-
started looking into it, right?
Well, like they started looking into it, and then eventually it became the. So here's what initially what they did, which made a lot of people a lot of money, is that they had the derby.
Okay.
So if you know much about the crab fisheries up in Alaska, they had a derby. So they would go, the initial mark that they hit is they go, well, we're going to need, and this is a irrelevant number, I'm just going to make up a number. We need 1 million tons of crab, and then we're going to stop fishing, right? And they said, and go. And they basically just shot a gun off, and all the boats took off, and everybody went off and caught as much crab as they could. Now, there's two problems with that, is that crab fishing became the most dangerous job in America because they started making taking a lot of chances.
Yeah,
Boats got sunk.
Yeah.
Boats got sunk. People died, and a lot of injuries and stuff along those lines. And there was a big problem is that when they had a derby like that, they would go, okay, we want 1 million tons of crab. And then they would call out on the radio, we've got 1 million tons of crab now, but now there's 300 boats that are half full of crab, and they all come back.
They got an extra 400,000 pounds.
Yeah, and then you go, there's an extra 400,000 tons that come in, and you go, oh, wait, this regulation is not working, because once they started to put it into effect, they started to realize, like, okay, our initial idea of trying to regulate this fishery, and eventually they... Now, everybody actually has a quota. So each boat that goes out, they say you can get 250,000 pounds or whatever the number is. You go catch that, and you're responsible for your numbers. You have to keep track of how much you're bringing in, what's going on, and there may be technically less money in the way that maybe they're earning a little bit less per hour, but they are earning a good wage, and the fishery is going to be sustainable for a long period of time. You and I were guests on at a what would you call that? Like a presentation, speaking engagement.
Yeah, it was a presentation by PJAC, which is a long acronym for basically like people who don't want to see the world ruined.
Right.
For lack of a better
Which is
term.
great. I think it's a fantastic group and stuff like that. And I think that more groups need to be motivated in the direction of what happened with the crab fishery, right? Is going, okay, we need to figure out what our sustainable numbers are, and then we need to figure out who's getting them in, who's bringing them in, and how do we track this kind of stuff so that we can have a sustainable population moving forward. Now, one of the big problems is, where does the funding come from? Because the funding has to come from somewhere. The money has to be in place so that these things can be done, because they're not free. It's not free to get this kind of stuff done. And so that's where like wild caught fish and that kind of stuff comes in, because once those guys are making money, it gives a value to the fishermen that are doing it, and they go, well, we need representation now. But where does that representation start from? Unfortunately, it has to start from the top down. So,
well, I don't know if it has to start from the top down. It has to start with money.
Well, yeah.
Usually,
that's the top. That's the top.
Is
the
money.
top down.
Yes,
Yeah.
usually, but it seems like it's the same thing. But technically, I could buy a little island and King Corey can live there, but if there's no money, I can't actually make anything happen. So even if I was like super passionate, I'm going to put all the chickens on one island and I'm going to save them all with no money, that won't happen. And so like NY Gold, it just said, now try to do that without government help, like in Peru. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. That's why Project Piaba exists, because the government doesn't care enough currently about what's happening. So that's what's happening. Like that is what we're talking about here. And this is exactly that high horse thing of like, it's super easy just to like, I can come up, anything you say, I can come up with a retort that basically is going to make you look like an idiot. Like, that's just what you can do. Be like, well, what about this? What happens if all the humans die? What happens if, like, well, we're talking about realistic, what can we do today to try and get closer to that crab fishery? Like, the problem with the crab fishery example, or not any example, is we learn over time. So in 10 years, we're going to look back and we're going to go, oh, we were doing it wrong. And then 10 years after that, we're going to look back at what we're doing and go, oh, we're doing it wrong. The goal is to keep doing it better instead of not doing anything. Like, the goal is to at least try to do something correctly instead of just like, well, just let what's going to happen happen. Like, we're trying to funnel money into things like that. You know, M.I. Gold says, third world poor countries are not getting to spend money on conservation when the people can't afford a shirt. That's actually a lie. Like, I myself donated $2,500 last night to that movie I was talking about. Like, and I've donated to Project Piaba. I donated to PJAC when we saw that conservation. So, you know, it's really easy to sit there from an armchair and just keep slinging things that seem like might be facts, might be information, might be things. But that's the whole problem, is when we say things like wild-caught fish are bad, that is just spreading an idea that is not being talked about. You know, so I can just say, like, wild-caught fish are great. And the bigger I get on YouTube and the more times I say it, the more true it's going to become. But I think it's a way more healthy thing to go, let's talk about why I might think this or might think that. I'm not saying wild-caught fish are great. I'm saying we need to look at it from a standpoint of, we saw what happens if the hobby bands together and goes, we are not buying wild-caught fish. We watched the Amazon River, and this is just one example. There's many examples, but we watched the Amazon River get worse. So we thought hobbyists, us, we thought we were the ones destroying the river. Look, they go in, they collect these fish, we're killing the environment. Then we go, whoa, okay, me as an aquarist, I'm not here to destroy the planet. That's not my MO. My MO is to, like, keep some fish in a tank. But then we all pulled back and go, whoa, I'm not going to be responsible for killing the planet. And then they go, oh, well, we all just lost our job, and now we are killing the planet. So now the goal is, how can we source in countries maybe that don't have a government that cares, how do we get them to start caring? And part of it is start rewarding people for sustainably practicing things. So, for instance, the conversation might need to change from, is this fish wild caught, to, is this fish wild caught, but who collected it? And, for instance, if you go to Project Piaba and you start looking, they have lists of collectors that are doing it sustainably. They have lists of people who are selling those fish that were collected sustainably and are interested in conserving the environment. And so that is what we need to be focusing on, not whether a wild-caught fish is good or bad, but was it done correctly? Isn't it? And because I can sit here from an armchair and argue against anything. You're like, well, I only buy from my local store. Really? So you bought from Russia that we may have done way more damage breeding them in Russia to the environment to get them to Oklahoma where you bought them than bringing them from the Amazon to here. Like, you can make almost any argument. So we just need to focus on what we think we can do to slowly move in the right direction and learn from mistakes.
Right. Yeah. That's the big thing, is that, like, it's not a blanket. There's not a blanket cure-all for any of these problems. It's such a multifaceted problem because it involves people, it involves these giant systems that are in place, and there's a lot that goes into it, and also the industries that are behind it, the governments that are involved. There's just so many things that are in play that to just have one real base opinion with just a blanket statement doesn't necessarily work that well. So, to stick with my sort of Alaska example would be that the halibut fishery up there is strong and ongoing and being pretty well maintained. And as a matter of fact, I personally know a guy who was buying illegal halibut and went to jail for it. I don't think that he was doing it on purpose.
It's pretty brutal to go to jail and not doing it on purpose.
Well, he wasn't buying it on purpose. He wasn't buying it illegally on purpose. But they were tracking it and did charge him with the ones that were illegally purchased and stuff like that. So in America, there are a lot of legislations in place to maintain our fisheries and stuff like that. So it is fairly difficult. Like, It's difficult for me sometimes to talk about foreign countries because I don't have an experience where it's like I was in Peru for 9 years and I can tell you boots on the ground.
Conjecture on what I think it would
Right.
feel to be in that situation
Right.
instead of I've been through that situation.
And so I think realistically, I try to cherry pick from some of the systems and experiences that I have here. That some of them work and some of them maybe don't work. That there are some systems here that do work fairly well, but as we were talking before, is that like to generate the money in order to get those big systems in place that like are in America, it's like how are we going to do that? So, and what I would agree with is that these are great groups of people that are trying to share some of the information of where does this come from, where's the documentation, who's in play and who's not in play. It's it would be weird if you needed some Tylenol and you went to Steve down the street and said, make me some Tylenol, and he's like, I can make Tylenol, bruh, and he just gave you like a bottle of some kind of pills that he made in his garage, right? So I think that that's one of the things that needs to come into play within where things are coming from, how they're coming in. Like Dean would be a perfect example of, he has the paperwork. He was the guy who collected them, or most of them, or whatever.
Yeah,
I know that they sent him other fish that, they just put him in. Surprise! Here you go. But it was documented. It was taken from the areas that was supposed to be taken from and stuff like that. So that right there is enough for me to go, all right, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense to me. But in some of the areas that he went to, things seem to be looking fairly good in the fact that like they're kind of headed in the right direction, right? Like maybe they're not 100% or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but they're heading in the right direction. So I would think it's more emulating that around the world and starting to figure out where some of these problem areas are. In Chile, they never thought that the aquaculture that they're doing there, they do fish farming in the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. So they actually they aquaculture their fish in the ocean, and they never really thought what was going to happen with the environment and stuff like that, how big of a problem it would be down the line. So that would be a perfect
10 years from now. They go, oh, that's what happened. All right, change what we do.
Right.
And like that's the goal. It's like fish keeping in general. Every X amount of time, I want to go, man, look how bad of a fish keeper I was at that time, and I'm better. And then in a time after that, look back on today going, look how dumb, or, look, like in 5 years or whatever time, I want to look back at this episode right here and go, look how uninformed I am compared to how I am now. And then 20 years after that, I want to look at that episode and go, look how uninformed I was 5 years from today compared to I am now. If I'm always getting better, or not, I don't want to say getting better, but getting more information into my brain, then hopefully we're making correct decisions. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen that the public doesn't know or doesn't key in on. Like for many years, like in the last 5 years, this was going on. And I, as a company, chose not to partake in it. But there were lots of companies that did. There was a lot of zebra plecos coming in from Brazil. Mm-hmm. And so because it was illegal to export zebra plecos, when they became, I think it was Colombian. So instead of Brazil, they were Colombian. They were labeled as Colombian zebra plecos. And I might be getting those two mixed up. But essentially, zebra plecos don't live there. But they would just drive them up the river and then get out of the river and be like, no, we caught these here, and ship them out. So knowing that, I wasn't buying any wild-caught plecos, no matter what country or what collection point you wanted to put on them, knowing that they were all, for lack of a better term, dirty, And so there's things like that, I, as a shopkeeper, was making my own personal decision, and I was choosing not to put money in my in a wholesaler's pocket that would put it in an exporter's pocket, that would put it in a collector's pocket, that was doing things that were not with conservation in mind. So, the government did say, that's an instance where the government did step in and say, hey, we're overfishing this, let's prevent that. And so I was choosing not to be part of that. And that's what this conversation is so that now you are my customer. You go, Corey, I heard about zebra plecos coming in that were kind of dirty a while back, which is not the case anymore because it got figured out and that got stopped. But I don't want to buy that. And then I go, oh, this person doesn't want to buy that. And then I go, I better not buy that. And then my wholesaler goes, hey, I better not buy that. They're not selling. And then the exporter goes, I better not waste my money shipping them out. And then the guy at the very beginning collecting them goes, maybe I should collect cardinal tetras legally instead. That's the problem is that took 5 years. It's not like I just stood here and, yep, stop that. And then they stopped. Like they had every person between me and that collector had to find ways to replace the income so their family didn't starve to death or whatever. I mean, that's an extreme situation, but at some of the very low levels, that's the case. For me, I just go, oh, well, instead of ordering zebra plecos, I'll order captive raised leopard frog plecos this week. Like, it was a very easy decision for me, but at the person collecting them out of the wild, it might have been the difference on whether their family got, a roof, built or not. There's things like that makes it much more difficult, I think. And I think that's the situation you're in. It's easy for me to sit here and go, yeah, I'm not buying those zebra plecos.
Right.
It's a way different situation when my wife needs to have her arm amputated or she's going to die, and the only way I can get the money is by collecting the zebra plecos, running them up the river and selling them. Mm-hmm. That's a way different decision than do I order dirty zebra plecos or a different sustainably collected pleco this week. That's a no-brainer in my mind. On the other opposite end, I'll tell you right now, I would sell illegal plecos to save my wife. I would. I know I would. If it was the difference between she dies tomorrow or lives tomorrow and all I got to do is go collect 20 plecos out of a river and she gets to live, I would do that. I just would. That's being honest, is I would do that. I would shoot my own dog to save my life today. I would do that. Is as horrible as that sounds, and I never want to do that, most people will never admit to what they would actually do if they're in the situation because their brain won't let them. They can always say, I would never sell my dog. You say that until there's $22 million in cash, and the fact, when you really think about it, you're like, so wait, I could adopt 5 million dogs with $22 million and create a preserve, and only one dog that's already 14 years old with cancer and tumors has to die? It would be horrible, but that's the thing you got to think about is sometimes there's just crazy situations that people are in that make no sense, and yet they make sense at the time.
Right. Somebody, Amy Westrick, posted in the chat here something that was, I thought, a good question. Yeah. Which is why am I not going with you on the trip to Peru? And I can answer that pretty effectively.
Okay.
Why am I not going? Well, it's happening in July, so there is a possibility that I might be able to trick the airline company into taking dollars from me in order to go down to Peru. To Peru.
Yeah,
It's a new
bro.
country. You go to Peru and then you fly over to Peru, right? So it's not that I'm not going. It's that we're trying to gather the funding. Gather the funds to do it. It's not free for me to go. I would like to go down there and look around and talk some trash in Spanish and see what's happening down there. But we shall see. July's a ways off. It's December right now, so maybe there's enough time to figure that out from you guys. But like we were talking about, this is a multifaceted conversation, I think, for an answer, right? As you were saying, with your store, is that if you find some information that starts to go up the chain where you make a decision, and it's a lot of those small decisions is what I think realistically compounds into a good outcome. Right, is that and from my personal perspective, it's people have consistently asked me, is why do you have chickens? Well, it's I have chickens because then I know where a portion of my protein comes from, and that's from me taking care of my chickens, harvesting their eggs, and I'm able to eat their eggs and know where a lot of my protein comes from.
Yeah.
Now, there is a point where the human body needs food, right? So, one of the things that I've been doing is it would be virtually impossible for me to go, I'm going to live off the land tomorrow and just run out my front door and go screaming off into the woods. I might make it, okay? I don't know if anybody else would make it, but I might make it. I don't think it would go very well, though. So some of the small changes that I've been working on from my end, right, would be to getting closer and closer and closer to knowing where all my food comes from, how it was raised, how it lived its life, and how it was here on Earth and stuff like that. So I look at it in terms for the as a parallel to the fish industry, as hobbyists and stuff like that, is that maybe you've made a mistake, accidentally bought something from a bad source. That doesn't mean, oh well, now I'm just a piece of garbage, right?
Right.
We're going to continue to make the smart steps moving forward.
You buy your chickens from Corey's Rogue Chicken Farm, and then you learn about that.
Right.
Now you just have more
and you
information.
find out Corey's Rogue Chicken Farm is beating the chickens and that kind of stuff. Then
for next time, don't buy from his chicken farm.
The good decision I have from there, well, I guess there's two good decisions. Is one, take care of my animals as best I can, right? Provide them with the best environment that they could live in. And then two, don't go back to that source again, because we do know that the dollars chase dollars, right? And that the dollars heading up and down are what's going to make some people make decisions in regards to how, things would be harvested, things would be, like wild caught fish and stuff like that, like how they're going to go about doing it.
It's a perfect thing and why I'm against rescuing fish from retailers.
Right.
That's why I'm personally against it, is because when one person, let's say, we're going to pick on your significant other right now. Let's say Vicky walks into a Walmart for whatever reason and sees a betta on its deathbed and says, I'm going to save its life. She's thinking about saving one betta, and that's one betta, and $4 is spent, or whatever the money is. But on a national level, 7,200 people did that this month. And Walmart looks at it going, oh, we made $50,000 selling bettas.
Right.
We should sell more bettas. That's that very trickle thing that a lot of people like, oh, I couldn't watch it die. And it's not like I enjoy watching that betta die, but I know if I save that betta and give Walmart the $4, then they do that to more bettas. Same thing. If you buy your chickens from Corey's Rogue Chicken Farm, and then you're walking by one day and you go, oh man, he's really beating on the chickens today. Let me buy them all so they don't have to endure that anymore.
Right.
I just go buy more chickens because I'm going, man, I'm selling a lot of chickens. And so it's a hard thing. And so that's where everyone takes their own personal stance. And I don't fault the person. I'm not standing there at Walmart going, I can't believe you would buy that fish and try to save it. I get it. In their own moral code, to them, they can't walk out of that store without saving that fish's life. That's their own thing. But just know that, those trickle effects do have a much bigger impact, whether it's buying that betta, not buying that betta, buying a wild caught fish, not buying a wild caught fish. Someone brought up a good point. We were talking a little bit earlier. The statement goes, and if countries in the West stop buying animals from poor countries, the option to kill out animals to save themselves or their wife are gone, and we save the wild. You were bringing up a very good point of, you don't believe that's true because at some point they still have to eat. So whether I'm buying a fish or not, let's say the Arapima, whether I'm gonna pay money to go catch one or keep one in my aquarium, if we don't do that, they just eat them.
They just eat them, yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a Corey sitting in Africa, sitting in the United Kingdom, sitting in India, sitting all over the world that goes, today, I need to eat. And here in Washington, I might go, I'm going to go to the store and buy some tacos that I earned with money. And then maybe in India, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have some Indian food, But maybe Aboriginal Corey is like, man, that warthog's got to die. I got to feed me. You know, like
Right.
that's at a very
it's the unfortunate
primal level.
It's the unfortunate decision that does exist. And like I said, one of the big things that we have to talk about is some of the facts that go on, right? And not necessarily just opinion. Okay, I'm not a fan of killing anything. I'm 100% not a fan of it. Like I said, I was on the better part of 5 years being vegan because I didn't want to be a part of that, right? And you know, the reality of the world is a little bit different than my necessary opinions, and I have to learn how to adapt to what reality is. It's like I might not like gravity, but I do have to adapt to the fact that there is gravity here. I might have an idea where I might be able to build a rocket someday and shoot myself into space.
Over
right?
time, you might
And then
evolve to go, gravity, not a problem
be
anymore.
able to live somewhere where there isn't gravity or anything like that. But we do have to remember, like, the facts that are going on, the things that are actually happening, is that the people that are there are going to make decisions based on what's best for people, okay? Like, that's how it works.
That's how a human brain works.
You know, it's like if you have a 3-year-old child, you have to make a decision on to take care of that 3-year-old child, right? More often than not. And that's like a part of the world. It's not, this isn't even something that I've said, but it's like team people. Like, you do have to kind of be on team people if you're going to be a people, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of those decisions that are made in these certain areas. And I guess to stick with the Arapaima is that, you know, the people that live there say, yeah, this is our favorite thing to eat. This is our favorite thing to harvest. And they need to eat to survive. So it's not a decision on, like, I like to eat frosting, right, from out of the frosting thing I got from the store. It's a matter of, I might die. This is how I need to feed my family. The money that came in to protect the Arapaima, right, is what they are utilizing to feed their family. Okay? So there can be a trade-off put into place, right, to create a value system for these creatures, right, that we want to protect, right, and we want to be a part of that protection. You know, that's the big thing. You know, if you look in America, there's more deer, elk, and wildlife in America now than has ever been in the past because it's protected, it's tracked, we know what's going on. Yes, there's a lot of hunting and stuff like that in place, but there's billions, with a B, billions of dollars in place that are protecting those animals and stuff like that, and giving them and essentially, like, allowing them to have more of a natural space and not have this, like, completely ravaged environment that's just going to continue to be ruined. And, you know, one of the unique perspectives that we have as Americans is that we do have the past timeline of going, well, here's where we screwed up. Well, here's where we screwed up. And here's where we screwed up. We polluted. We ravaged. We pull oil out of the ground. We pull coal out of the ground. We pull all this kind of crazy stuff that we're doing. We have ruined big portions of our own environment. And we see on the world scale a lot of other countries starting to do the things that we did in the past. So,
like an Aquarius, I can see
I
you
feel-
have ammonia burn going on. Let me
Right.
try and help you stop and do a water change
Yeah.
before your fish die. We're doing that for other countries, and meanwhile, if you've never kept a fish before, you go, no, the water looks fine. And you're trying to, yeah, I know, but I've been down this path. And that's the thing is, we're quick to shove our opinions and beliefs on others, but we have to lead people there.
Right.
And you have to, you know, once people see their fish die from ammonia and they can see the ammonia kit and they can see all those things happening, then they start going, maybe I should learn more about ammonia. Maybe I should do these things. And that's what the wild caught fish is. Instead of just going, water changes are good, water changes are bad, let's learn about why they're good or bad. Let's learn, you know, about these things. And that's, you know, someone said, like, this topic's too heavy, that kind of stuff. Not all topics are going to be heavy. Not all topics are going to be light. But most people don't talk about this topic because it's so confrontational. But if no one talks about it, how do we actually ever address the problem?
Yeah, how are we going to improve the system that is
Yeah.
in place now if we can't at least just have that middle of the road conversation?
You don't have to
I
participate.
agree with
You
this.
don't
I agree
have
with that.
to
I
listen.
disagree with this. I disagree with
But
that.
if
you
no
know?
one, like let's say someone wakes up tomorrow and has never heard of Corey and Joel and stuff like that, and they just Google, like, are wild caught fish good or bad? And they listen to this episode, I think they'll at least have two people's opinions. They'll have Project Piaba. They'll have some other things they can Google and look up. And that might spur them to go, oh man, I've now spent 32 hours worth of research, and my personal opinion on this subject is...
X, Y, and Z.
But if you were to Google it and nothing comes up, then maybe you go, yeah, I don't know. And then nothing happens. So we are towards the end of the show here.
We got to hit the
and
lightning round here.
We got to
on
get the
Super
lightning
Chats.
round with super chats and stuff like that. We went long on this one, which I think we could go another 10 hours and debate and argue. And I think after 10 hours, we still wouldn't be actually any closer to making something happen. But this here is one more, one more drop in the bucket, and it's like, well, it's going to take another 4 gallons till that bucket overfills. Yep. But we still have one more drop at this point. So it's one tiny, minuscule step closer. So DJ Pride with the $5 super chat. Happy holidays. Indeed. I'm having, I had a great time on vacation, and I'm going to do another probably 8-hour live stream on Christmas again, because that's what I do. And I enjoy the holiday times. They're a big business time for me. A little bit stressful because I got taxes and inventory counting and all that kind of stuff, and employees need to take time off to be with family and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, in general, yes, I do have a good time during the holidays. So
Yeah.
luckily, I haven't lost any loved ones or anything to kind of taint my view of the holidays, so I'm lucky in that aspect.
Great time of year. I got even my sister's coming to town this year, so that's gonna be cool.
Yeah. Caroline Epler, hey guys, happy to see you back. Great discussion. Can you do magic fingers? There they are. Yes. With a $20 super chat, so thank you so much. We do put that back into the show, and we'll be working on that today. We're going to work on the studio a bit, do some more planning and that kind of stuff. And, I honestly, this is what drives me. What drives me to do this is not the monetary value of my business. It's one of those things that I have to make enough money for myself to contribute to our family. My wife also works, that type of thing. But once that is sustainable, my goal is education, which you guys know, and outreach and things like that. And so that's why, a lot of things are going to look really weird. If you don't know me, you're going to go, I don't get it. So they ask us to donate to Patreon and support the show and all that. And then I heard Corey say earlier in the show he donated $2,500 to this video that is going to talk about this topic. And yes, at the end of the year, I'm looking at my bank account in my business, and we have a surplus of money compared to what I need to live off of and run my business. And so the business goes, I think it would be wise to invest $2,500, which is what they needed to complete this project, so that this video could come out. And whether or not the video is amazing or not, it will probably spur 500 discussions between people that go, hey, what do you think about that video? And if we're really lucky, maybe it's 5 million discussions and stuff like that. And so my options were, do $2,500 end up coming out of that business, we pay taxes on it, we do things with it, maybe it furthers the studio and stuff like that, or do I think those $2,500 are better spent with this production that's been going on for about 10 years at this point, and getting that information out there? I did think it was worth it, so I chose to do that. And it sounds weird when you're like, why do you need money for the studio or this or that? Because money, basically you guys donate money, for lack of a better term, donate money to me, and I'm just the guy that oversees where it goes. If that project wasn't there, maybe it goes into building the studio, maybe it goes into Project Piaba, maybe it goes into anti-netting devices in Lake Malawi. There's projects and things, but I do like to donate money and support causes that I think will make an impact. And so from a business standpoint, the logic was, $2,500 invested in that video long term would probably make some kind of impact on the hobby that will keep that business in business and further allow me to do more things. So it's a weird line of logic, and to some they'll go, that a giant waste of money. To others they'll go, great, that's exactly what I'm about. But I wanted to explain how someone can go, hey, buy my stuff on my website, and then also is giving away the money. You know, it's really just a form of me saying, like, how about you guys just support what I do, and if you support me too much, I'll support other people also. Like, that's been my MO. I think if you've been watching me for a couple of years, you'd be like, well, why is Joel on the show? Why was Lamont on the show? Why is Steam Fought Aquatics around? Why do you hang out with all these other YouTubers? And it's because I try to support any way I can, and sometimes that means, yeah, I got to pay out of pocket and fly over there and do things and bring people to you guys.
Sometimes we got to fly to Chicago.
Yeah.
And get weird.
Flew to Chicago, Sergeant Tanks, went over to his house. Like, there's different trips and different things, and it makes different things happen. And I'm not saying I'm responsible for it, but that's what I do use the money for. So money falls into this bucket, and then money has to come out of the bucket in different ways, and that was the way we chose so far. So,
that's
$20.
That's the crazy question that I get all the time. It's like, it's like, well, I don't understand. Like, you talk about money or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I look, you and I have sort of the same viewpoint. Is that, like, the money's just a tool. The money's a tool to be able to do bigger and better projects, and that's what we want to keep doing. We want to keep, we want to be able to do bigger projects, bring more, whether it be education and entertainment. You somehow bring those two words together. Who knows how? Yeah. Edutainment.
I mean, even something that's crazy entertaining but not educational at all is good. So, for instance, I know of at least 10 times I've seen people in the comments that say, I've never kept a fish before. Somehow YouTube started me watching your videos, and now I'm a fish keeper.
Right.
Like, and I would wager that it's some more of the entertainment things, not so much the educational things that rope people in. And so you never know what you're doing that has an impact, that does things. Like, for all I know, donating that $2,500, that guy starts a chicken farm where he beats the chickens, or right. He goes the opposite, and now he starts the next biggest project in India to save, whatever. Like, right. That you never know the full impact of what you do, and so all you can do is make decisions based on the information you have at the time and keep moving forward with it.
Yeah.
So, $5 super chat from Michael Faulkner. Working, so I'll have to catch this later, but excited to hear about the topic. If you haven't already, can you speak on gene pool dynamics? So I'm going to lightning round this a little bit. You can give your input, but I actually don't believe we really run into that in fish, like limited gene pools. And based on the information I've been able to witness, collect, that type of thing, like at some of the stock centers, like with live bears, they've had the same strains going since like the 60s, right? And when I say the same strain is literally nothing's been introduced. We're 50 years in, and they're not genetically being deformed. You can change color, you can do some of these things, but I'm not convinced that the reason we should bring fish in from the wild is to keep things genetically diverse, at least when it comes to fish. I think good husbandry practices of culling and just maintaining a line for I don't know, like maybe strength and color and all these things is usually is good enough for our hobby. Now, could you make a case for like, well, once every 20 years, we should bring 10 cardinal tetras out of the wild, mix them into a facility where they're breeding in Russia and strengthen them? Sure, I guess. But I don't, like, a lot of times people are like, I've had these guppies for 8 months. Should I outcross? And like, no. If you were at 8 years or 18 years, I'd be like, yeah, probably. But at 8 months, and it's become one of those things that, kind of like wild-caught fish are bad. Oh, God, inbreeding is bad. It's like, well, yes, without the oversight, right? So wild-caught fishing could be bad without oversight, and same with inbreeding. Inbreeding could be bad without oversight. If I inbreed a guppy and there's no criteria to what a good guppy is, then maybe I'm just making it worse, and bringing some wild-caught stuff in will reverse that. But then there's also times when that would actually make it worse.
Right.
You know, and gene pools are changing in the wild too. We watch it. We can see it happen in a fast enough time. So what I mean by that is like you can have different African cichlids from collection points where it's like, yeah, took 1 million years to become, you know, Mpimbwe versus Burundi, you know. But there's things like in Mexico where it comes to Goodeids where they've only been separated for like, oh yeah, I can see the difference in the last 100 years. You know, there's things like that where it's, you know, so that's not always a good thing. Sometimes things have to adapt because they're this close to dying. Like that's where the whole argument comes from of like, just because this killifish lives in this environment and can tolerate it doesn't mean that it wouldn't do better living in Nebraska as opposed to Africa or something. Like that's just where it had to adapt and evolve. And so there's lots of, I guess, unanswered questions, and we don't know because we haven't, like, you can't really just shop a fish around like, turns out it was Chile where that thing really wanted to live. Like, you can't really do it, so we just got to go with the information we have. So
yeah, I think the gene pool dynamics, you will see a lot more benefit as a person to just make sure your water quality is good than stressing out about gene pool dynamics. I know that personally from breeding what would be considered difficult shrimp, you know, high-grade crystals for a long time. You know, they turn and burn genetically speaking, so they have about every 3 months you have a new generation. And it would take it would take 100 years realistically to see a real difference in their genetics, speaking genetically. You know, just from them going, you know, they evolved over a time period of 50,000 years. You know, so, you know, breeding 9 generations of shrimp or 9 generations of guppies, their genetics are going to be virtually identical, maybe with some slight variations within the RNA, which is like coloring and those kinds of things, which is not, it's not a real difference genetically speaking. So I certainly wouldn't stress out about that too much. I would just continue to breed and pay attention to your water quality would be the more important thing to pay attention to, and go that route instead of stressing out about what genetically is going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, like if I had to be worried about genes, I'm more worried that us reintroducing fish to the wild is a problem. So like there's like Pseudotrophis solosi, we captive bred a bunch, then we release them back into Lake Malawi. I'm much more afraid that we've done something to that fish that now makes it susceptible to something that is native to Lake Malawi than the reverse. Like, you know, as a hobbyist fish, we're generally controlled by money and looks and things like that, and not many people focus on how robust a fish is anymore or something like that. So yeah, I think we've covered that. I mean, that's really gene pool dynamics is probably an entire hour-long episode on itself, and that's the lightning round version of that. So even though it was long, that's about as short as
as short as we can get.
Yeah. So Audrey Fisher with a $5 super chat. Pea puffer populations are really decreasing in the wild. I want to learn to breed them so I can teach other people to breed them as well. Any tips? They're actually, in my opinion, pretty darn easy to breed. Keep a colony in a tank. They pretty much breed all the time. When you gravel vac, you'll notice in that mulm layer in the bucket, you'll see a lot of tiny, tiny little eggs, and you could raise them from there. The hardest part is not the breeding of them. It's actually the raising of the fry because they're so tiny. And most times, like if you had a 55-gallon tank with like 3 or 5 pea puffers in it, and it was crazy densely planted, after 2 years, you'd be like, I have 12 pea puffers. Like they'll live off the infusoria and they'll raise up and do all those things. And what it really comes down to is, do you want to do it? Because I would say at least half, if not more, of the pea puffers I buy from my store are all captive raised already. They're already being done on a farm level. But it all depends on populations. Like just, it was a little side tangent talking to Dean. Amazon puffers are kind of rare and expensive in terms of a fish. Like, it's not $1, obviously. It's more, and it's harder to get, and they're all wild caught. But he says when he was there and you're collecting, they're literally everywhere.
Right.
Like, there's a billion of these things, and they're kind of a problem. And so what we were able to deduce, and this is our uneducated opinion, this is just from he went there, I'm sitting here at shop going, why could they be rare? We were able to deduce that it's actually just hard to ship them.
Right.
That is the problem.
They're
it's
difficult
the
to ship.
shipping of them, because they're everywhere. He's like, you bring up a net, and there's 500 fish in it, and 125 of them are those puffers, and then there's 57 other species in there between the rest of the fish. So they were very abundant, at least when he was there at that place he was at. And then, like, yeah, his came in poor. And for me, getting Amazon puffers, it's always rough. Like, they just do not like shipping.
That was so sad to see how many of them just didn't make it in the shipping, and that's unfortunate. And but that's
it was out of his control. In the fact,
how they bagged them up all in the same bag.
Like, he, you know, off camera and that type of thing, he's like, I don't understand why they would singly bag all of these and then ram all of those into one bag.
Right, when all the single bagged fish could have easily been in a big
both
bag.
Both of our logic from the two people standing in the room were like,
they reversed this.
Like, bag up all those pencil fish together, I guess, and single bag those Amazon puffers.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been for sure in my mind. But that's the thing, is like, we didn't, or not we, but I say we. Neither him nor I got to pack them, and maybe they know something we don't. Like, oh yeah, you put those together, it's a bloodbath, or normally it works. Like, maybe we're the uneducated ones, so you never know.
Could be
until you've tried it. If you if we tried shipping that same group of fish 27 different times, at the end, I feel like we could say, oh, we found this, this, and this. Groups of 3 work best on this. Groups of 1 works best on that. Because, like, maybe for all we know, maybe singly bagging those puffers, they 100% die every time. Like, maybe it's just like, I'm alone. Oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, but because I've never shipped them. Well, that's not true. I have shipped them one at a time to customers way in the past, but I've never done it straight from wild to my store type of deal.
Right.
So like, maybe that's too much of a shock of like, I need my buddies not to just shock out and die right now. Who knows?
It could be.
But yes, pea puffers, captive bred are a possibility if that's what you're into. Tesla stuff, $5 super chat. I feel this sort of discussion is important, but a bit much for me. I get enough stress at work. I'll be back when we're on the lighter things. No worries at all. That's the great thing about, you know, the internet, I guess. You pick and choose, just like picking up the newspaper. I don't read every single article. I don't read many articles at all. I can't.
That's why we do this. That's why we do this format too, is that we can jump around from topic to topic.
Yeah.
You know, and not be
tomorrow's tacos and donuts.
Tacos and donuts.
Yeah. Today just happens to be a heavy.
Later will be robots, lasers, and the overall effect.
Yeah.
That they have on not our environment, but our psyche.
Yeah. So the important part here, though, that I wanted to point out is Tesla still super chatted and put money towards the cause.
Right.
Being that overall, I would say most of these topics are very lighthearted and you know, that type of thing. So I do appreciate that.
It is a heavy topic. I get it.
You know, no worries. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely. Yeah. We knew going into this, like, we're going to polarize people. There's going to be X amount of people that just leave comments of like, you guys are just dumb and stupid, and I hope you die in a fire. And then there's going to be people like, thank you for talking about that. And then there's going to be probably the majority of like, cool, yeah, I listened to it, moved on. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how anything
Or they're
goes.
Like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I never really thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole goal is that, you know, let's say you hate wild-caught fish, and then you go and you spend an hour researching, and you still hate wild-caught fish. My goal was accomplished. You spent an hour at least educating yourself. And I would wager if I don't know how many people in the chat, let's say there's 100 people in the chat, I would wager 90 of them haven't spent an hour researching the topic, but 50 of them have an opinion on the topic.
Yeah.
And so and I do it all the time in the world too. You know, obviously we gave a lot of opinions about other countries and we've never been there. And I myself probably haven't done due diligence on, I didn't spend 16 weeks researching the economy of Chile before I spoke on it. So I realize that I'm my own hypocrite and my own problem, and that I at least am aware that if I was going to talk about it way more in depth, I should educate myself before I really, and that's why I started the whole topic with, these aren't necessarily our opinions, that type of thing. We don't necessarily know it all. We're using, you know, hypothetical examples to make a point, not that we've thoroughly researched that particular point because that's what the internet does. They just tear everything apart. So like, well, actually, it's like, well, okay, sure, yeah. Let me talk about this instead then.
Yeah,
So.
man. I'm also I'm interested in the new topics, the new research, the stuff that's coming up, even old research and stuff like that. I'm very interested in it, and I certainly don't know everything, but I am one thing I do know is that I am 100% curious about things that are going on, and I definitely like if people have things recommended reading or possible stories or things in the news or any of that kind of stuff. I'm more than happy. Post it down in the comments if you can. If you can take the time, or if you have something that is pretty interesting and those kinds of stuff, pop it down in the comments and stuff like that. And as long as you may have a complete difference of opinion or whatever, but that doesn't change like what may or may not actually be happening, right? And as people, we really need to make sure that to not let our raw opinions dictate exactly what's going on. So the more research we can do, the better. I certainly don't know everything out there. 100% don't know everything. That's all. So more stuff will be coming, but it was hopefully a good opportunity to like at least open up the topic and start bringing more people involved. If it's just Corey and I, we're only two brains. There's, as KG Cichlid said, there's 182 people watching right now. That 182 brains are better than two.
Yep.
Always. You guys are all, I'm sure, probably, I'd say our fans are 99% really intelligent people to a relative degree, can put together sentences and figure out all that kind of stuff. And so 182 brains is way more powerful than ours to you guys to be able to go out and like do the research, things that you find, that kind of stuff. This is a conversation more than just like...
I felt that and learned that just this week when I got access to the community tab on my page. I posted a question.
That's so crazy I had that before you did.
Yeah. I posted a question on what their definition of fish police was. And in my mind, I thought for sure everyone was going to be like, my definition of like, oh yeah, people just like hating on others the way they're doing stuff in fish. And there were people that thought that. But then there was lots of people who didn't think that. And then there were people who asked like, well, I went and asked my son. Or I went and asked. And so I got all these perspectives. And a lot of the people genuinely thought fish police are, they're the people that control whether you can go collect a fish, you can go do these things and stuff like that. And so it just opened up my mind of like, man, I would have, like, to me, in my job and all that, the fish police, it's just synonymous with people that are like putting down others and that type of thing. But on a world scale, and these people were chiming in from all over the world, it was much different. And so I'm like, wow, that really opened up my eyes. And so, the 150 brains that all gave their input in there. And I prefaced the question with like, I just want to know your actual definition. There is no right or wrong here, because that's like saying what does cool mean? Like, oh, well, in my opinion, it means like, oh, that's a nice guy, and he's everyone wants to be him. Or the next person goes, well, I think it means that it's not warm. And like those are both true statements, I guess. Yeah. So it was cool just to get unbiased info when you ask for someone's definition of a word. That's what it is,
Right.
So if you ask me what's the definition of a pig, and I draw you a picture of a chicken, I might genuinely just think, that's what I call those things, pigs.
That's what I call those things.
Yeah. So it was a fun not experiment, but it was a fun thing, and it opened up my eyes. And so I do enjoy the bigger brain power of 182 brains,
right,
as opposed to 2. So Brennan's Life says hello, $5 soup chat. Thank you, buddy. How do you say this? Trilogy?
Pele Trelge. I was actually he became a Patreon of mine this morning.
Okay.
Like 8 a.m. or something like that, and I literally was like, I need to look up this guy's last name.
Yeah.
Before I have to try and say it out loud.
Trelge.
And yet here we are.
Yes.
Without me having been able to look it up.
Yeah. So he says. So he donated 50 SEK. What is that? Sweden dollars? Sweden. I'm not sure. I'm really bad with foreign currency.
I'm not sure what the SE is. I don't.
The SEK. It's.
Oh,
I
SEK.
think it's the same one that Zach's crazy aquarium fish tank guy donates. Is it Crohn's? What are they?
It might be.
Anyway, that's not the important part. But he says, I trust you to spend these. Became a patronizer today, so you'll get more money to spend. P.S. Corvus got Patreon dollars. Stay strong. Corey, too. Hey, I appreciate all the support. We'll, try to
It's
put it
in the
to good
super
use.
chat. He said,
Yeah,
that he became a Patreon today.
And Dominic Martino with a $2 super chat. Russian aquarium fish farms? I thought Southeast Asia best. So there are fish farms all around the world. So I know I can speak limitedly because I haven't visited any of them in Russia, but I do know they crank out a lot of clown loaches using hormone breeding and roseline sharks. And I know there's some koi that come out of there. I know that there are fish farms in, for instance, Japan, China, Hawaii, Israel, Sri Lanka, Malaysia,
Florida,
Singapore, Florida.
Australia.
There's even other ones around. I know there's one in Texas, Goliad Farms.
Japan.
So really almost
Canada?
anywhere. Yeah,
It's kind of cold in Canada. Too many moose.
I bet you someone's doing it.
I bet you. Yeah.
I bet you there's 5 of them.
Considering how much hothouse produce even comes out of Canada, where it's
I
like
bet you there's
snow.
5
I think
quote unquote.
Doesn't it snow like 10 months out of the year up there? Okay.
Yeah, which in general, so the more time you can't spend outside usually makes better fish keepers, or
That's
at least a
right.
stronger fish community because they're spending time inside. But really, there's fish coming from all over the world, and definition of fish farm could be loose. Like, okay, so maybe that's only a 40,000 square foot building indoors, but they're producing a lot of fish.
Mm-hmm.
I know I visited like coral farmers and things like that in Ohio, where warehouse space is cheap. So lots of stuff's going on all over the place, but they don't make it super apparent because they can't have the public just like knocking on the door like, what you doing today? Like
what's happening?
that affects business. But there's a lot of projects going around, and there's we could segue all the way into, like, does it make more sense to aquaculture a cardinal tetra in Russia or in Washington, or pull it out of the wild, or there's a lot of crazy things going on, and that's a whole different episode, but yeah, it's kind of like that whole food, like farm to table, like eco footprint, carbon footprint thing going on, and that's a whole different discussion. I don't know in one episode we can save the world on every front, so it might have to be a few episodes. So we're going to take the last one today and close this out. It's a long episode, but we've been gone for a while, and
We've been gone.
I had fun on this topic. Well, I have fun on most topics, but the topic led us long. So Copper Canyon Aquatics with the $5 super chat. Corey, any hints on what the Christmas sale might be? I need a 48-inch Fluval 2.0 and sand. How many pounds of the co-op sand do you recommend for a 75-gallon? So first, I have no idea on the sales. I haven't even started to think about it yet. I usually think about it about 3 or 4 days before it happens. And it's mostly, I've got so much stuff to get done from getting back that I haven't had a chance to even start planning, like, what are we doing? Like, I haven't, so much so that even my employees are like, so what are we doing? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know yet. So I would say, here's probably, you can pretty much always save about 10% off retail by using Podcast 10. Mm-hmm. So like on a 48-inch Fluval light, like you're looking there, we're already $10 cheaper than Amazon, and you won't have to pay sales tax unless you live in Washington. And then if you use Podcast 10, you save another $17.50. That's already a decently cheap light. Now maybe at Christmas, maybe it's 14% or 17% or something like that. That's a possibility as well. But what I would tell people is think about it like this, unless you're like crazy hard up for dollars. Think of it like, so you spent $5 here to ask that question. If you buy it today and get 10% off, and then on Christmas it's 14% off, it's like you super chatted $9, and it just goes into that fund of making more content and doing all those things. If I knew, and this is the other thing, by the way, if it's worth your time, Aquarium Co-op does have a policy. It's on the website. If you bought that light today and got 10% off, and then on Christmas I go, they're 90% off, you can email us and we'll refund you the difference up to 30 days.
Up to 30 days.
Yeah, because we're not trying to like take advantage of anyone or do
the
any
sale
of those
forever.
Yeah, and the goal is that like if you need a light and you want a light, you can buy a light today, and then if crazy super sale happens in 4 days, we don't want you to just be like, oh man, sure do wish I didn't buy that. And you're like, we don't want buyer's remorse. Like, we're not trying to do that. But at the same time, I also implore you, please give us a little bit of time to do it. We had one guy leave bad Yelp reviews and go irate because we didn't credit him. And this is no joke. $1.62 within 8 hours of him sending an email to every email we had, called the store. Meanwhile, I was busy filming, and I'm the guy that pretty much processes returns because you have to get in deep into the accounts to start moving money around.
Right.
And it's like, if you can't give me 8 hours, that's kind of a problem. So, like, if you need us to refund your, $7.62, I'll get to it. Trust me, I will get to it. But it might be one of those things like, oh, it took me a day and a half. Don't worry, it's on the way. Cool. And we move on. So, yeah. Alrighty. Well, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for supporting us, guys. I know we're back. We're back on Tuesday. We might even be back on Monday. We haven't talked about it yet, but we're talking about changing the schedule a little bit. And so by changing the schedule, it's like we're back on Tuesday for sure, us doing this. But we might also be here Monday, possibly. Don't hold us to it yet. We're trying to figure out what we're doing, get a little more dialed in, bring you guys a little bit more, and keep it going on. We'll be live tonight. Tonight? Depends on where you are, I guess. Later today, tonight, on Joel's channel, Corvus Oskin. Pretty easy to find. It's on my, if you went to our channels and you look at recommended channels, you can get us there. I don't know what we're talking about tonight, but at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we're live on your show.
Yep, that's where we'll be, wilding out.
It'll be another hour-long episode. No idea what shenanigans are going down on, but
If you guys are crazy engaged, it might be 1 hour and 4 minutes.
Ooh, yeah, 4 minutes extra. But I do want to point out one last thing. On the Real Fish Talk channel, when it's not live, there are advertisements. But so far, on the podcast version, which we upload this later, there are no advertisements at all.
Right.
And so if you're like, man, I hate advertisements and I hate you, listen to the podcast.
Right.
If you go, I want to see Corey make jazz hands, well, there's going to be some advertisements because when a ton of people watch a ton of ads, not a ton, like I let it, for this channel, I'm letting it do it automatically. So if YouTube puts in one ad, that's fine. If it puts in 172 ads, it basically detects where we stop talking for a little bit, and then it goes, yeah, put an ad there because they weren't talking. And so I'm not doing control over it because I don't want to spend an hour after every show going, where does it make sense? Yeah, we segued from wild-caught fish to chickens there. Let's put an ad there. I think we're going to lose people here. So it's all, it's all not, I don't want to say random, but not controlled by me. And if you're like, man, that sucks, listen to the podcast or just check out the content on the main channel. Typically, there's 1, maybe 2 ads max. And that's what pays the bills so we can have Jimmy. Hopefully, by the way, new internet tomorrow. Hopefully. They already came out once, failed once. They came out twice, got half the job done. 3rd time's tomorrow. We could have better internet, and the goal is to bring you guys 2K. So right now we're in 1080, but with better internet, click one more button. Could be 2K, and on your 4K TV, I would look twice as handsome. Twice. Handsome. Twice.
2K.
Yes. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. Do appreciate it. If you'd like to support us, you can do it through our Patreons. You can do it through aquariumcoop.com. That puts money in the bank, which puts money into other fingers of the hobby. And we'll see you guys tonight and on Tuesday at the very least. So thanks for hanging out. Let me hit the button, and we're out of here.
Then we got to go. What are we? We're going to,
I think we're going to eat. We're going to eat, and then we're going to plan.
We got to.
We're going to do that thing.
And then we got to,
thing.
with the,
But we're going to wait
right?
for them to do that, and then we're going to do that.
Yeah.